In this episode, we will learn how to practice intentional acts of kindness and like ourselves even more. Helping us with this is an author, creator, and owner of Uncommon Sensing LLC. Welcome to the show, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm very good. And Toby, thanks very much for having me. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
Same here, same here. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Mirror Talk. I really appreciate your presence here right now today. I'm looking forward to having a soulful conversation with you about kindness and how we could be kind to ourselves, kind to other people around us, and how we could use kindness to basically heal the world. And the motivation behind this conversation we're about to have is your book, which is titled Practice Intentional Acts of Kindness. So
Mm.
before we dive into all the questions and the conversation I would love to have with you, I would just love to learn from your life journey so far. Like, what led you and what inspired you to write this book of yours?
Ah, well, there were actually a number of things that led me to it. One thing is I teach the Feldenkrais method, which is a movement technique based on learning theories, and it's about people who have injuries or pain or want to improve functioning, but also people who want to improve their self-image. And one of the things that came to me, because the movements are done very slow and small, and one of the things that came to me was that really both clarified and instilled a richer feeling in that process was asking people to move in a way that they like the way it feels.
Mm,
And I really got interested in helping people like themselves more. And after a while, I thought, well, this is my job. And I've been doing that for many, many years. And I thought, well, that's really an intrapersonal process, something we each do with ourselves. And I thought, how can I make it more out in the world, more connected to others, more interpersonal? And one day I just happened to do something that I guess was kind of kind. And I noticed how I felt after I did that. And then I realized that, I can't think as human beings of two more fundamental things that would be worthwhile to develop. One, for all of us to be able to like ourselves more, which is a challenge for many people. And
mm.
two, to be kinder to ourselves and to others. And so
Yeah.
all of that came together. And finally, I wrote the book with the idea that, this is my mission. This is what I want to do from now on. So, yeah.
Mm. That's a great mission, a mission to help the world to become a kinder place to be. That's a wonderful mission. I wanted to say, what other mission is greater than that? But yeah, that's a wonderful mission. But it's very easy to say be kind to one another, be kind
Mm.
to yourself without truly knowing the meaning of kindness. So can you shine some light on that? Like, what does it mean to be kind to ourselves? What does it mean to be kind to others?
Well, most people, even if you look it up in the dictionary, the word kind, when you read the definition, they're always describing the result of what it looks like. And actually, many definitions are like that. And the thing that I'm interested in is kindness as an action. Now, you mentioned two things like being kinder to ourselves and being kinder to others.
Mm,
Honestly, I think being kinder to ourselves is much more challenging.
mm,
That we're often better at being kind to others, taking care of others, doing things for others. And there's a big gap in terms of how are we able to do that for ourselves, with ourselves. And I think that relates to the idea of liking myself. If I like myself, then I'm able to be kinder to myself, with myself. But
mm,
now, all of these things, in terms of a definition in my book, what I'm talking about are definitions that are actions, that are concrete things that we can understand about maybe the theory of what it means to be kind, but then
mm,
things that we can actually do to create more kindness. And
mm,
I have to act in new ways. It may seem like a nice idea, but it often it rubs up against our self-image of how we think of ourselves. And So we have to approach kindness both with ourselves and with others slowly, one day at a
Mm.
time, with small approximations of success, not trying to change everything in our life all at once.
Yeah, that's true. Small steps at a time, one baby step
Yeah,
at a time. Yeah. So what can
yeah,
we do what can we do every day? Like what can we do every day to make this a primary practice of ours? Like what are the small steps to take every day to ensure that we become kinder and kinder by the day?
yeah. Well, there are many things. We can listen better to others. We can take more time to share, to give them as a kind act our fuller attention, doing something like that. I
Mm,
think when I think of little steps and slowly growing something, I think of choosing an activity that's very simple, that you have to do at least once a day, and it's something that you can practice getting better at. And
mm,
one place I found this many years ago, when I was moved out of my parents' house, I had this sense that I really wasn't good at anything. I was 19 years old. At 19 years old, I mean, not
mm.
many people are good at anything anyway. But I had this feeling that I needed to be able to have some feeling of satisfaction with myself. And I
Mm,
decided to choose a simple activity, which was to brush my teeth better. I thought, I don't really brush my teeth that well. So I'm going to practice doing that. And no one would know about it, but it was something I had to do every day. And funnily
mm,
enough, as I developed a new habit of brushing my teeth every day, I started to feel, it may sound silly, but I started to feel a sense of accomplishment. Huh, like I was capable of doing something and growing myself simply, right?
mm.
I
Yeah.
think the other things that I think of are literally practicing acts of kindness towards other, whether it's very, very small acts of generosity or listening, like I mentioned before, or just, you asked me the question before of where this all began, and it
Mm.
actually, I have another answer for that. That because it
Okay.
began much earlier. My father, he developed dementia later on in his life, and he ran out of money.
Mm,
And my brother and I had to support him, and I was never close to my dad, really. I mean, we didn't have a bad relationship, but it was kind of there, but not very meaningful. And then
mm,
finally, we had to put him in a home. And it was in Florida, and my stepmother was leaving, and I thought, no one's going to visit him for the summer. So I started calling him every day, just for 5 minutes. And sometimes he'd have the phone upside down or do silly things, or he couldn't hear me. But
mm,
every day, and he always knew where I was. I was fortunate with that. And I did that every day for about 3 years. And when he finally passed, I was living in California then, and the home he was in Florida, so the time difference worked well for me. And when he passed, every morning I still would go pick up the phone, to go to call him. And this idea of that's the idea of giving our attention to someone really fully, um, which as I investigated it later on in other contexts, I found it really wasn't easy. So, like right now, I have friends. Some of them are much older, some of them are not well. I have some friends who are very young who have challenges in their life. And I've made it a habit of calling them like once a month. And they're so happy when I call because, first of all, a lot of people don't call them. So that's one thing.
mm,
And to take that time of 5 minutes a day. Now, I said that was challenging. So, when I was writing the book, and I have a chapter on this, I thought, okay, I'm going to practice this with my dog. I'm going to give him 5 minutes of attention every day. Well, easier said than done. I'd find myself after 2 minutes going to check my email and going outside. And, he would sit there for 45 minutes if I kept petting him. But 5 minutes is really hard, you know?
Yeah. Those are simple yet very
Yeah,
meaningful acts of kindness. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Which we could
yeah.
all use basically. And I love the fact that you talked about, kindness in listening, like taking that time to really listen to someone speak. Like, for example, you calling your father when he was in the hospital, for example, or in the elderly's home, for example, and really listening to him, having conversations with him, or just having conversation with friends around. Maybe they are talking about their challenges, and you giving them
Mm-hmm.
that listening ear just to show them that you are there for them. Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
goes a long way. Yeah, in
it
making the
does.
world a better place. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. And I believe, yeah, one thing that you also said that I would love to repeat is the fact that yes, this things seem very easy to do, but in this kind of busy world that we're in right now, we have to
Oh, yeah.
intentionally, take these actions basically. And you said kindness is like taking that act, that making that action, taking that step towards
Mm,
doing something to improve ourselves. Yeah,
yeah.
but when we talk about then um, being kind to ourselves, being kind to other people. This requires some kind of connection with ourselves and connection with
Mm-hmm.
other people. So how do we then
Mm,
develop this connection with people? We have to develop this connection before we are kind to them. So how do we develop a meaningful, healthy connection with ourselves and with
yeah.
others?
I think your choice of words there really speaks to the essence of what kindness
Hmm,
is. That
hmm,
kindness is a way of connecting with myself and a way of connecting with others. And most of us, well, if I think of being kind to myself, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I was writing the book, when I got to the chapters on being kind to myself, I got blocked.
hmm.
I couldn't write for about 5 years. I had to learn more about what it means to being kind to myself. And
Wow.
that takes many different forms. That can be in terms of boundaries around others, or overcoming some of the internal dialogue that I carry with me, that's all negative and doesn't really help move me forward towards the things that I want, towards really fulfilling my intentions in life, doing that. And
Hmm,
so that connection with myself, it can come up in so many different ways. It can come up from meditating or doing yoga or doing Feldenkrais or doing Tai Chi. It can come up in journaling, but we have to create the time to do it,
hmm,
so that's one of the essential things in terms of finding that connection with others. One chapter in my book is about spirituality and kindness, and to me that chapter is all about connection, whether it's
hmm,
connection with others in a community or connection with something bigger than myself, whatever I'll choose to call it. That it helps me act and be in my better self. The here's another idea of connecting with ourselves. Okay,
hmm.
and I mentioned it at the very beginning that in my work in teaching the Feldenkrais method, in the movement lessons that people do, I ask them to move in a way that they like the way it feels.
Yeah.
Now, it took me a while to realize, why am I just talking about that in the class? Why isn't that something we're all practicing all the time? So
Hmm,
just like if we finish the interview and we each get up and go to the kitchen or go to the bathroom, that to have the attention to, huh, I'm just going to move more pleasurably. It doesn't mean I go dancing through the room or anything like that, but I just have a quality of liking how I feel when I move. And I've
hmm,
found that this practice of moving in a way that we like the way it feels, it's kind of entering in through the back door of who we are And it really can change our self-image. It really can make a big difference for our lives, I think.
Yes, that's true. And that takes some intentionality, like, it says in your book also,
Mm.
like being conscious of how you are moving and enjoying how you are moving. That takes a lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of, yeah, consciousness and intentionality. Yeah. And you made mention of,
I've been,
sorry, yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, please, you can go ahead. No problem.
I was going to say that consciousness or awareness is one aspect of making changes in our life that I'm very much trying to understand and investigate, because it requires that moment of, oh, I'm going to pay attention to myself this way, or oh, I'm going to pay attention to others this way. It's a really little window. Like I spoke about calling some older or younger friends who are maybe in more need. That at the times when I go to call them, I can't tell you how often I go, oh, maybe, and I just feel like, nah, later. And there, I need to differentiate the feeling that I have from my action.
Mm, mm,
Because every time I do it, I feel better afterwards, you know? But that
yeah.
window, and you use the word consciousness, I can use the word awareness or attention, that
Mm,
for that to happen, that's already a higher level of connecting with ourselves towards others.
yeah. That's very true. Wow. Yeah. We need that connection, that higher level of connection with our mind, our body connected together.
Mm.
Yeah. We have to improve that to ensure that we're able to be kind to ourselves, to really know who we are, what we are,
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
we enjoy, and knowing what we need. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's deep. That's very deep. I mean, I'm learning so much from you already from this conversation.
You
Yeah.
know,
But
something, when you say it's deep,
mm,
maybe that's good, but wouldn't it be
yeah,
better if it wasn't deep? If it was just
that's true.
the way we were, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, that's true. That's the goal, right? And that's why we have this conversation right now, to be able to make it a common thing for us, like a norm for us, basically, to be kind to ourselves and to be kind to others. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think could be like hindrances that could stop people from being kind to themselves? Like, what are those things that block us? Like you said, for 5 years, you had to stop writing because you could not complete that chapter of being kind to yourself. Like,
Yeah,
and that's a lot. That's what happens to a lot of people out there too. So, what can
sure.
we do? No, what are those things that stop us from being kind to ourselves?
Well, I think some of the major things that prevent us from being kind to ourselves are these unconscious habits and conversations that we practiced that are usually revolving around the idea of, I'm not good enough, or I can
Mm,
never be as good as others. In a
mm,
sense, in in my work, I'm always interested in learning,
mhm,
but I make a distinction between learning and how we've learned how to learn.
mm,
So what that means is that how I've learned how to learn, any learning context I go to, I repeat the same behaviors. I sit in the back of the room trying to hide. I don't want the teacher to call on me.
mm,
I think everyone's smarter than me. And these things are going on without me even realizing it. And that, again, it's where I need to take action in something that's not so connected with my everyday life, like just walking to the bathroom and moving in a way that I like the way it feels, or learning to brush my teeth better. Or if I take on a task that's too big, I set myself up for a failure.
mm,
Sometimes I'll work with people and we'll talk about some change that might benefit them. And sometimes I say to them, how long do you think it'll take to make that change? And they go, 3 weeks. I go, no, I don't think 6 months. No, I don't think so. I think these are deeply embedded patterns in us. And if we're to be realistic about it, I would say a year and a half to 2 years. At which point they freak out. They're like, what do you mean a year and a half? That's too long. And I go, well, think about it. If you said 6 months, and in 6 months you didn't manage to change something in yourself, you're going to feel disappointed and give up because you gave yourself 6 months. But if you have a year
Yeah.
and a half, after 6 months, you go, I have another year. And after a year, you go, I have another 6 months. And the kind of change that I become interested in, that because sometimes people think the change needs to be all or nothing, and I think that's not only unrealistic, it perpetuates and contributes to the negative feelings of failure or lack of success. So if for example, if I use humor a lot when I teach, and most of the time it's funny, but sometimes not, you know. But
Mm.
instead of saying, I'm not going to use humor, or I'm only going to be funny, which is too absolute, it's not realistic. If I can interrupt my joking a little more frequently, right? So that I don't hang out in these negative spaces so long. That's really the key to it. That it's not that I'm going to eliminate my negative thoughts. I don't know if I can do that. But maybe I don't hang out with them as long, that I catch them sooner. Now we're back to that idea of consciousness, or awareness, or attention, that I have to catch myself. Here's an example of it. So a number of years ago, I was flying home from Europe. I've been teaching for a number of weeks, and I was on the plane and I started thinking about all the things I had to do for my next trip, which was coming up soon. And I got completely overwhelmed. And I caught it. And I asked myself a question, which became a mantra for me. Is this a good time to be thinking about this? And the answer was no. I'm tired. I don't have materials with me. I can't do anything about it. So why am I wasting my time thinking about this, just struggling with it? And I actually calmed down, and an hour later, that voice came up again. Is this a good time to be thinking about this? And I said, no. And what I've discovered is every single time I ask myself that question, the answer is always no. It could be because I'm tired. It could be because I really can't do anything about it right now. It could be because I need more information. But the thing I'm talking about is that I don't spend as much time suffering with the noise in my head. So all of that makes a difference, I think.
Yeah. I believe that's wow. That's good. Well, I would really love to know, like, how can kindness heal this fractured world? We've talked a lot about kindness, being kind to other people, being kind to ourselves, and you've really done a great job, in explaining how we could do all of this. But when people ask nowadays, like, oh, this world has gone a long way to be so fractured, and a lot of
Oh, yeah.
damages has been done, that even kindness does not seem to be normal again to us. So, what can we
Yeah.
do, or how can kindness, help us to heal the world?
You know, after I finished the book, I was thinking about this idea and I added a message from the author.
Hmm.
And my original thinking was, wouldn't it be great if there was someone in the world who could help the world negotiate itself?
Hmm.
Some great human being who had perspective and understanding that could resonate with everybody. But of course, I don't know anyone like that. And then I thought, oh, what about if there were some great spiritual teachers who came together to do something like that? And I thought, well, what if we got the Dalai Lama and the Pope and a great imam and a rabbi and then I quickly discovered that I was only listing 4 religions out of hundreds, and it would be like the UN of religions, which
Mm,
wasn't going to work either. And then there
mm,
are people like Richard Branson and David Gabriel who have put together a group they call the Elders, which are meant to help people understand things more, clarify things for them. And the more I went into this, it was like going down a big rabbit hole to just think, I don't have an answer for this. And then, of course, I came up with an answer, which is nothing new at all. Many people have said it, but maybe I came to it through a different path a little bit, which is
mm,
it needs to begin with all of us individually. Each person has to take more responsibility, has to act more in these ways intentionally, even if it's a challenge, even if it's not who they think they are, it's who they want to be in the future, but oh, I'm
mm.
not there yet, so I can't. No, you can. You can start right now. And I can't come up with any other answer than each of us creating more kindness. But there's another piece to your question for me, which is because I get asked this question a lot. As I think about it, I see more kindness around me.
Mm,
And honestly, I'm kind of surprised sometimes. I'm like, huh, maybe the world is kinder than I thought it was. Because yeah,
mm,
it's fractured, like you say, and there's all kinds of struggles and things in the world. But
mm,
people, many people are trying to do good. Even here's something: even the people who are violent in some way,
mhm,
that are fundamentalist in some way,
mm,
their intention behind it is to have a better world for themselves.
mm.
It's not a bad intention. It's the actions of what they do that aren't so great, you know. But
Yeah.
I, you know, I, did you ever um, like being on the supermarket and there's someone in front of you and this person just is spiritual. They're breathing deeply and they're smiling and they look so patient. And then the person in front of them starts taking too long and they get all bent out of shape, right? Because it's taking too long. And I thought, I used to think, oh, Mr. Mrs. Spiritual, oh, really, huh? And then I would judge them for that. And then I realized if someone is practicing any form of kindness, whether towards themselves of meditating or going to some spiritual tradition or religious tradition, that they're going in the direction of bettering themselves. Doesn't mean they're there
Mm,
yet. And so
mhm.
then I found, oh, I get much more accepting of more of the people around me. And when
Yeah.
I don't, I have another way to practice it. I
Mm,
can read you something from the book. It's actually a quote from Ram Dass,
mhm,
and he says, when you go out into the woods and you look at trees, you see all these different trees, and some of them are bent. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, and so it turned that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You just allow it. The minute you get near humans, you lose all that. You are
mm,
constantly saying, you are to this, and I'm to this. This judgment mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. So I love this quote. And I would say, in each level of becoming kinder for me is becoming more challenging. Like things in the book I can do, I'm pretty good at that. But now, like this quote, not judging people or making up stories about them. And I lived with this quote for a while before I came up with a way to utilize it.
mm,
And that is like I'm in an airport and I'm looking at someone and I'm making up a story about them. It could be positive or negative, it doesn't matter. And if I can catch myself, we're back to that window again, I just go, tree. And all of a sudden, it's like my story melts. And I feel like I can more clearly see who they might be, who they are, you know? And so if we could all do that, it's a puzzle. It's really a puzzle why our world struggles like this, you know?
That's true. Yeah. Yes. I mean, if we
Yeah.
could all see ourselves as work in progress and appreciate ourselves for being that, being, you know,
Yeah.
uh, human beings that are on a journey of improving themselves, then I believe the world would be a much better place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I've learned so much from you. I'm sure there are people out there who want to still get across to you. And there are a lot of other questions that we could have covered in this conversation that we could not. So if there are people out there who would like to reach out to you, maybe get the book, ask you further questions, what's the best way of doing
Sure.
this?
So I have a website for that. It's called practicing-kindness.com. And there's information on the book and more talks with me and examples of the book and also a sample worksheet. And I'm always available if people write me. I do my best to answer people pretty quickly and see if I can help them in some way.
Great. Thank you so much. The link to your website will be in the show note of this episode. So I encourage everyone out there to copy the link. Information about the book are also available on the website. Where to get the book is available on Amazon, other platforms
Yeah.
also. So I encourage everyone out there to get the book also. Thank you so much, Alan, for this wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you enlightening us about kindness and even sharing practical life stories that we could also, utilize to also be kind to ourselves and to be kind to other people out there. Thank you so much.
And thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.